Proceedings moderator Matthew Schuchman and actor Shohreh Aghdashloo and Strait from The Expanse.
Thank you both for being here with us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. So let's just get right to it. Let's start with the obvious. The Expanse is based on a book. Did you have any familiarity with it beforehand, or kind of how did you delve into it once you found out?
I did. I had read the first two books before I got involved, and was a huge fan.
I'm afraid I had no idea. I wish I did, because if I knew, I would have been even more excited when I was offered the role. And all I said, it was Hawk Ostby, one of the writers of Children of Men and Iron Man. So I immediately said, yes, I'm doing it. He said, don't you want to read it? I said, you wrote it, didn't you? He said, but it's based on some novels. And I said, I will read it, but I'll do it. So I wish I had.
So you haven't gone back yet at all to look at it?
Yes, of course. As soon as we started filming it, I started reading the books. I started with the second book. I cheated because my character is in the second book, really, not in the first one.
Did you all see any differences between the characters that were written for you for television compared to the book?
We stay pretty true to the books themselves. I mean, we wanted to do our best to honor the novels themselves because they are so beloved. And we actually had the two novelists. James S.A. Corey is actually two people. It's Ty Abraham and Daniel Frank. And they were in our writer's room. So they actively wrote episodes. One of them was on set every day. We really wanted to stay true to the book. So the only exception is bringing, of course, Shohreh's character forward from the second book to kind of round out the kind of visual medium of it, bringing Earth more into the mix than the first book does.
Yeah, we stayed pretty loyal to the book, yeah.
So with them being there, I think people nowadays are getting used to the idea of showrunners. I think it's always been there, but it's now kind of open for people. If you have a question about your character, who's the kind of first person you go to? Is it the showrunner, director, writers?
Well, it depends. I mean, this is the first time that I've actually ever worked on something that had source material. Usually, if it's an original script or whatever, depending, if it's television, you usually go to the creator. If it's film, you usually go to the director. You can sometimes go to the writer if they're different people. But for us, we had a slew of different people, authorities on the books and authorities about science. I mean, Narayan Shankar is another producer on the show, was a physicist before he started producing. So any kind of scientific questions we'd always go to Narayan. But just in terms of character background, that kind of stuff, I mean, who better to ask than the novelists? And they're right there.
And talking about that in general then, knowing the story ahead of time and or not knowing the story ahead of time, you said you already had interest based on the writers themselves.
Absolutely, yes.
What did you find most fascinating, though, about the story? Is it the setting, or is it kind of the film noir-esque story itself?
It's, apart from the setting, which is amazing, it's the story. Three stories are running parallel, simultaneously. And I love all of them, especially mine, because it's very Shakespearean. Although it's in the space, but it's very, especially my part, is very Shakespearean. And I just fell in love with the character and the story both.
And for me, when I first read the novels, I was really struck, and also the script as well, I think the script actually does this incredibly well as well, is the balance between the three different tones of the stories. I mean, you have a very kind of classic detective noir thriller in Miller's story. You've got this kind of alien-esque fight for survival out in space and a political thriller back on Earth. And they all supplement each other to push the narrative forward in a very specific way. And the way that Mark and Hawk were able to balance that within the screenplays and the way Ty and Daniel did that within the books, I found incredibly compelling and very rare for the genre.
You mentioned political thriller as well. We actually have a clip of Shohreh being at her most political, I think, if we just take a look real quick.
Cold War is over. This is something new.
Well, change a few nouns there, and we're not all that different from anything happening today.
That's what I love about this. Another thing that I loved about this piece when I read it, although set 200 years from now, but it relatively speaks for today. It's just for the audience to decipher the codes and find out who is who. It's amazing.
Does it feel strange, though, the idea that this fantasy is a lot closer to reality than one would want to think?
Is it a strange?
You know, I think it's a great function of the genre. I think science fiction, when it's done best, at least throughout the last 100 years or so, it's always thinly veiled symbolism of what's going on at the present time, right? So we have these, we've got the UN and we've got Mars and the belt, and you can apply that to any kind of historical moment in the last couple hundred years, whether you want to do it today or in the Cold War or colonial in England and America or whatever. But it allows people to discuss or talk about these issues and have it be digestible and not isolating to the audience. So. We have this kind of otherworldly, large world-building element to the show, but we're also talking about topics that really relate to everybody today and relatable to everybody today.
Speaking of specifically, since you mentioned it is the UN still.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to go out and talk to somebody who works at the UN to kind of get an idea what they do, but do you kind of have that access if you wanted it?
Of course we do. What I love about my character and we have in common is that we don't take no for an answer. So we do our best to save Mother Earth. Earth must come first. But then, of course.
Well, I mean, did you have a lot of soldier, astronaut, ice truckers to talk to?
So many ice truckers to talk to. I did most of my research based off of the books. Frankly, I dug into the first two books and tried to ascertain what kind of drove Holden to be out in the belt in the first place. Because everybody you meet on the Canterbury in the first episode is out there for a reason. They're all running from something. But yeah, Holden was in the Navy. He was kicked out of the Navy for insubordinance and has a streak of not really wanting to adhere to anybody's authority. And that continues on through the story. That doesn't really change.
Well, to get a good look of kind of what that's like, you and some of your crew, let's take a quick look. Very angry young men. You're very angry.
Super angry.
Now, at the very end there's a little can of some sort floating in the background there, which I'm sure was probably digitally enhanced there. But from what I understand, you dealing with anti-gravity is a lot of kind of wire work. It wasn't necessarily going in the vomit comet or anything like that.
Yeah, most of everything you see in the show are practical sets. So what you just saw there is completely practical. And whenever we were doing Zero G, it was all on wires, and we had a choreographer there every time to make sure that we were moving correctly and making sure it kind of applied to the scene in the correct way.
So far from what I've seen, I haven't seen you kind of get up into the anti-gravity space. Do you make it there eventually?
No, I'm afraid not this year, maybe next year. I'm really looking forward to it. And people keep asking me about sex without gravity, and I said, I have no idea. I haven't tried it. This guy has tried it. I don't know. How is having sex without gravity?
Fantastic.
Good. Then you got to try it.
Now, how much time do you get to spend with, because there's such an expansive cast here, some people that have not met yet, not kind of been together in the same scene, so what kind of atmosphere do you have? Do you spend a lot of time with just your crew members and or your committee members?
Actually, we spend a lot of time together with his crew on Sundays. We just actors. We get together, we go over the lines, we talk about our characters and where we're going next, just like Flash Gordon. But I was a fan of Flash Gordon, so you can imagine.
Yeah, we all really dug each other. I mean, I know it's cliche to say, but we actually really got totally lucky, and everybody gave everything they had and was committed 100% to the show. And we did actually every Sunday on our weekend get together, all of us actors, to discuss our choices for the week and kind of go through what we wanted to go through, and spent most of our free time together.
It's great to live on location. We shot this in Toronto, and most of us are from the US. And almost 4.5 months, 5 months, we get to be together, talk to each other, have free time for each other. It's amazing when you work on location. That's why I love.
There's also a lot of great character actors in here that are playing smaller roles. Shohreh, I have to ask what it's like to be married to Brian George.
perfect. Love doing it. Such a gentleman and such an amazing actor. Yeah.
No, he's somebody's everybody. If you don't know him by name, you'd see his face, you know exactly who he is. And Stephen, you also very quickly, Jonathan.
Yeah, Jonathan Banks, a legend. He's such. It was incredible. It was actually the first scene I shot for the show was with John, and it was amazing. I mean, you know that. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the first episode yet, but he has a very kind of. He comes in with a climactic kind of scene for his character, and I just executed it with such incredible kind of vulnerability and grace, and I couldn't think of a better person to kind of deliver the reality of how claustrophobic and mind-bending living in space can be.
And you mentioned seeing the first episode because the pilot's available for everybody. You know, you'll be able to watch it tonight as well, but pilot season was always a big thing, and with new media, it may have changed a little bit. Being able to kind of see their reaction ahead of time, does it kind of change how you feel about a project?
What, in terms of like making a pilot?
Yeah.
We actually didn't make one. We were ordered to 10 episodes without a pilot from the beginning. It was straight to series, and you know, I think what it did, you know, did for me and for the couple other cast and crew that I've spoken to about it, it gives a sense of confidence just within the idea of the show and the people involved, and you know, we got there from day one and threw ourselves in with complete commitment because we were on the ride. I mean, it wasn't going to stop. We weren't going to stop and change things. Like it had to be done well from the beginning, and we had that. I mean, everybody from the production designers and crew to the actors, directors, writers, everybody gave everything they had, and really wanted to see the potential for this hit.
It was like a 10-hour movie, really. And it has the quality. It has the quality of movie when you watch it. I was watching it the other day and I was thinking, this looks like a film more than television. But I guess it's larger than television.
Well, I mean, television's becoming the new film in a way, and actually maybe you can both speak to, because you both had experience in television before, or maybe, you know, because you had Magic City, the difference between maybe premium television to broadcast television or basic cable television. Does it feel the same production-wise or anything along those lines?
It did with this, yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's a really interesting time in television because we have hit this kind of golden age, and there's incredible content on multiple platforms that you can see in different kinds of ways, and you see these companies like Syfy really investing in premium content in a real way that you know, to make a drama, you know, regardless of whether or not it's set 200 years in the future or within the past, and to get it financed and supported in that way is very difficult in film these days. Film has really changed quite a bit, and a lot of the quality writing and production has really gone to TV because, you know, you have these companies really supporting it like Syfy does, and you also have the luxury simply of time. You know, you have 10 hours to tell a story, so every step that the character makes or the story goes, you have the time to make it justified. Every step of the way, you can have incremental growth as opposed to it being kind of at a faster pace in film, which I think is attractive to a lot of artists.
It's great for the actors as well, because overnight, you're at the heart of the people. When I did House of Sand and Fog, after the movie was even nominated for an Oscar, Ben Kingsley and I, people would barely recognize me. After 24, no matter where I went, people would immediately recognize me. Are you the woman on 24? Everywhere. Morocco, Jordan, Tunisia. In Morocco, this 10-year-old boy was following me at the bazaar, and I was afraid. I turned around and I said, "What do you want?" And he said, "Madame, c'est artiste." I said, "Oui." He said, 24, 24. I said, "I give you a sandwich and a coin, and just don't let others know who I am. Just let me get out of here as soon as possible." Overnight, people would recognize you, and if they like what they're watching, immediately you're at their hearts, which is perfect for an actor.
You also now have other ways for people to recognize you as well. And kind of, I always like to ask this question, the idea that I love there are people out there who will go, I'll do this really big budget movie so I can make something smaller of my own. you have a voice in the very popular game Destiny, as well as others, but that's something that would
Mass
pay off, I
Effect 1,
imagine.
Mass Effect 2. That's where I get to play Capitan. I wouldn't be able to play Capitan in a movie, but in a game, video game, of course I can. And I love the fact that every time I visit friends, their kids come and say, Mommy, your friend is in my game. It's like, are you really? I'm like, yes, of course I'm in Destiny. Which one is he playing with? Destiny. It's me. Who can have a thick voice like this?
It's a fantastic voice, of course, though. That's
Thank
the
you
important
so much.
part.
You're so kind. Thank you.
Well, you guys, I'm sure, will get ready for like the Expanse, the video game. Somebody will put that out.
Sure.
That's what we're hoping. I'm hoping for
Absolutely.
that. And the dolls and the gadgets and everything else.
Well, we're going to start to turn over some audience questions in a second, but I have one more thing, and I'm starting to do this to you, Stephen, but Sky High is one of the most underrated films in a long time now. So when are you going to get the cast together to kickstart a sequel?
I don't know. I'll have to get on that. I'm still very close with Mike Angarano, so I'll ask. I'll ask if he's on it.
Mike, you heard it.
He's right there.
Let's make some phone calls going.
That's right. It's coming.
Let's see if anybody has some questions out there.
Well, you guys have emphasized the fact that the show has a lot of relationship to now. One of the things, but 200 years in the future, there must be things that you guys had to figure out in your heads that would be what people 200 years in the future would also do. I mean, when you look at where we're at now, 200 years ago, we didn't quite talk the same way. We didn't move the same way. I don't think New York was quite like it is now. So what were the things that you thought about, besides the things that related to now, what were the things you thought about that would be different from now that you had to figure out how to incorporate into your characters?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about, I think, is most emphasized in The Belt. When you get to Thomas Jane's world, you see that there's the way people are speaking is an amalgamation of different kinds of languages, and there's a lot of hand movements and different kinds of haircuts and tattoos and things. The tattoos became cultural after the early spacesuits were burning people's heads. So they cut their hair a specific way so that it wouldn't get involved with the technology, and when things got burned, they just tattoo over them. And the way that people were moving their hands while they talk and that kind of stuff was due to the fact that the comms were really shitty in the beginning, and they actually had to use hand movements to communicate with each other. Thinking about different things, especially out there, people are taller, they all have to take growth hormones and bone density treatments just to be out there. So people have all these different kinds of physical deformities, and you start to see the human race starting to evolve into a different physicality out there, to the point where they can't even come back to Earth. It's actual torture, just having them hang there on the wall. I think while it speaks, the show in and of itself, politically, sociopolitically, whatever you want to call it, speaks to a lot that's going on today. We've taken race out of it and more put a geographic part onto what divides people. So people are defined not necessarily by the way they look, but more where they're from. So Mars and Earth and the Belt all have very distinct cultures and of themselves.
When I was reading it, trying to make myself ready to portray this role, obviously I was thinking of the same thing. And I thought maybe the pace is going to change. Future people are faster. But then I was thinking of my heroes. Indira Gandhi, 50 years ago. Margaret Thatcher, 36 years ago. Madeleine Albright, 28 years ago when I got to know her. Secretary Clinton, still. Contemporary. There is no difference. They're all focused. They all have that poker face that you can tell. And I thought, maybe I'm lucky in this way because politicians don't change. They have the same ingredients throughout the history, and they do not change. Even Caesar's face, every time I look at the movies, I see that Caesar had a poker face, and we couldn't tell exactly what he was thinking of. So politicians don't change, in my opinion. We don't know. We'll see in 200 years.
I'm a huge fan. Huge fan. Love Sky High. Loved Magic City. Huge fan. I'm actually wondering. I'm looking forward to getting into the series, but I know the fifth book was just released. I don't know if that's ending the whole storyline. If not, if you get up to that point and no new books are released, are the directors gonna take their own direction on where they feel the story should go, or?
Sure, it's a great question. Well, I think there are 9 books planned, so there's no shortage of new material coming out. And I don't want to say how far we get in the first season in terms of the books, where we end in the first season and whatnot, but we have no shortage of material to pull from, that's for sure. And we have the authors there with us, so we're kind of growing with them as we go. Thanks, man.
On top of that, since there are shows like The Walking Dead that have evolved what the original source material was and kind of changed what it could be, do you feel that you have some sort of, I don't want to say power, but some sort of influence on what possibly could come in the future because the writers are there with you?
I think that there's no way of it not. At least I know Ty, for example, who's on set almost every day. I think it would be difficult for him not to see our faces, when he's writing the books in the future. But the truth is that we have so far to go until we get to even the end of the 5th book, which is already finished. That he's so far ahead of the game. I'm not sure what we're doing now necessarily affects what Hill and Daniel will be writing in the future for those books. I don't know.
The resources are enormous. 5 novels, each is like 600-700 pages. So I guess we still have to wait for them.
We have a long way to go until we get there.
Exactly.
Hi. I just wanted to say first off that I am a fan of the things that you've done in the past, especially Believe. That episode you did, I was crying. Oh my gosh, you were so good. But I just wanted to ask, more of grounded in reality, how has working on the project changed you in your life after working on it? How have you evolved? Yeah.
Immensely. It was amazing. What happens in the show, it's just like 24. For me, it's a mixture of 24 and a Star Wars. Because whatever the show suggests or foresee, it happens. Episode 9, 8 or 9, I ask a politician friend of mine who lives on Mars. I say, Frank, why do you live on Mars? Because I'm not happy with the idea. I'm afraid of Mars. And that at any given moment, they may take over the Earth and take our resources. So I'm not very keen on this idea of Frank. I said, Frank, why do you live there? He says, because I like the environment. I say, why not Albuquerque? It looks the same. Which it looks the same. I had not seen Albuquerque until last week. It looks the same. I've seen the picture of Mars. Anyhow, he says, look, darling, I like to live on Mars because of the fact that we had a garden here on Earth and we turned it into a rock. Over there, they inherited a rock and through a common goal, they turned it into a garden. When I was reading it, I thought, how beautiful, how poetical, how philosophical. Went back to LA. I live in a gated community in the suburb. Had a letter from the Homeowners Association saying, get rid of your pots and plants. You won't be able to save them because you can only water your plants twice a week. How could you save roses and geraniums in the pots twice a week? So I had to call him Sir Charles. I said, Sir Charles, come and take my flowers. He said, what about the pots? I said, take the pots too. I don't need them. After he left, I poured a cup of tea for myself, went to the backyard, and I literally cried because I noticed how I am turning my backyard into a rock. That's how. We're running out of water. Global warming is not a joke. It sure isn't. It's happening already. What about you?
Yeah, for me, the show, I think, just personally had an incredible kind of effect. I mean, working on a show of this size and of this many moving parts with so many great artists in front, behind the camera, writing our scripts, directing episodes, creating these sets that we were literally blowing up every 2 weeks. It was an incredible collaborative experience on the scale that I'd never worked on before, and it was a very inspiring place to be, an inspiring place to work, and it's nice to see that it's possible.
Hi. It's always good when books that turn into shows stay true to the books. So what was it when you read the books that you were like, this is this characteristic or this thought or whatever of my character that I want to stay true to and I want to project in the show?
Well, my character starts chapter 5, second book. Chrisjen Avasarala, a politician who comes from a tribe of politicians, a master manipulator. She believes that the end justifies the means, and believe me, she's supposed to be the Undersecretary Deputy of the United Nations, but her knowledge exceeds her title. She knows everybody's names at the UN. She knows everybody's psychological profiles, background, pay rates. She even knows who is sleeping with whom. So when I was reading this description, I thought, I have to be there, and I have to play it as perfect as possible, because this woman is perfect. She speaks 10 languages. She has it all at her disposal, and all she needs to do is to take action. So that's why every time I'm about to start a scene, I tell myself, action, and then it happens.
I wanted to make sure that Holden's journey from self-absorbed, cynical, slackerish guy that you meet in the beginning, his transformation into this kind of inadvertent revolutionary, I wanted to make sure that arc hit hard. I mean, that's the thing that struck me when I first read the books, was just how unprepared this guy was for the circumstance he finds himself in, and the kind of growth that he has to make to just survive and to keep the last remaining folks in his crew alive, and to tell that story as honestly as possible, because he's a very gray character. He's not black and white by any means, and he makes a lot of mistakes along the way, and he kind of fumbles his way into greatness. And I wanted to make sure that kind of rang true.
Hi guys, I want to thank you. The show looks amazing, and it kind of gives me hope that someday I'll get shows based off of Destiny, the video game, or Dead Space, because it has all these elements that I'm geeking over. But that's neither here or now. You did mention that the show has so many elements to it, detective noir or just political issues, and with that otherworldliness. Which one of some of those issues do you think is going to have a lot more, I guess, gravity within show that's going to pull viewers and it's going to have a bigger weight? Or if anything, or just all three?
Sure. Yeah, I think all three of them are very important to the structure of the story. So you'll get more of each, and all of them affect each other. So like the resource problem on Earth, for example, when you see the first episode, and I love this also about the Terry McDonough, who we have to mention is an incredible director of 1 and 2, and also 9 and 10. Made very subtle choices, when she's flying into the UN, and you see very subtly, there's no close-up on it, but there's just seawalls around Manhattan. There's seawalls around the Statue of Liberty. It kind of looks like she's, in a kiddie pool. The environmental problems here directly affect what's going on in the belt, for example. Like, I'm on an ice hauler, which is kind of the modern-day equivalent of an oil tanker, but I'm hauling water. That's what I'm doing. It's become the most valuable resource in the whole solar system. So all of these tensions and different issues, we're at the point of conflict and rebellion in the belt because the UN and Mars control their resources, and they're at the mercy of them. So all of this stuff ties in together, which is, I think, why I found the kind of the harmony between the different story structures so impressive in the books, and I think our creators for this show really managed to do the same in the show. And so to your point and to your question, they all remain incredibly important because they all directly affect each other.
Thank you, Shohreh. Thank you, Stephen, for being here. Thank you,
Thank
everybody
you,
else for coming.
Matthew.